Episode 1, The Sabbath, Returning to the Ancient Path. Before there was Israel, before there was Torah given at Sinai, before there was temple or priesthood, Yah established something sacred. Genesis 2, verses 2 to 3 says, "And on the seventh day, Elohim ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and sanctified it." The first thing in all of Scripture that Yah called holy was not a place, and it was not a people. It was a day. The Sabbath was woven into creation itself. As the generations continued, Yah later gave this command to his people. Exodus 20, verses 8 to 10. "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to YAHUAH, your Elohim. On it ye shall not do any work." The Hebrew word translated as work here is mahalach. Mahalach does not mean every kind of activity. It refers specifically to productive labor, the kind of work connected to commerce, income, and economic production. The Sabbath interrupts the economy of man so that the people can remember the provision of Yah. For 6 days, the world runs on striving. On the seventh day, Yah calls his people to stop. The prophet Isaiah later explained the heart of the Sabbath. Isaiah 58, verses 13 to 14 say, "If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy day of YAHUAH honorable, not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words, then you shall delight yourself in Yah." Notice what the prophet repeats 3 times: your own ways, your own pleasure, your own words. The question of the Sabbath is not simply about activity. It is about authority. Whose agenda governs the day? Isaiah also uses a very interesting phrase: turn away your foot from the Sabbath. In ancient Hebrew thought, the foot represents one's path of life. To turn the foot meant to stop treating the Sabbath like an ordinary day of movement and commerce. In ancient Israel, this meant pausing normal business activity. Nehemiah later enforced this when merchants tried to trade on the Sabbath. Nehemiah 13, verse 19 says,
"Close the gates, now! Hold there, one more push!" It's done. Hold steady.
"When the gates of Jerusalem began to grow dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the doors should be shut." The people were reminded that the Sabbath interrupts the normal rhythm of economic life. Isaiah also says, not doing your own pleasure. The Hebrew word used here is chafetz. This word does not simply mean enjoyment. It refers to personal pursuits, business interest, and self-driven enterprise. The Sabbath does not forbid joy. In fact, Isaiah commands the opposite. He says, call the Sabbath a delight. The difference is this: joy centered on Yah instead of activity centered on self-interest. Isaiah also speaks of not doing your own ways. The Hebrew word derik means one's normal patterns of life. In other words, the Sabbath interrupts the routine that shapes us the rest of the week. One ancient saying captured this beautifully. 6 days the world shapes you. On the Sabbath, Yah reshapes you. The prophet also speaks of not speaking your own words.
What a beautiful sunset.
It's amazing. I love it. It's perfect with all of you.
In the ancient world, this referred mainly to business speech. Conversations about trade, contracts, financial planning, labor instructions. Instead, Sabbath conversation turned toward scripture, praise, reflection, fellowship.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Peace.
The rhythm of speech changed because the rhythm of the day changed. But the Sabbath was never meant to become a heavy burden. Yah himself said the day should be called a delight. If the way Sabbath is taught produces fear or constant pressure, then the teaching has drifted from the heart of the command. YAHUAH later addressed this problem when he said in Matthew 23 verse 4, "They bind heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on people's shoulders."
That is not what my Father intended.
The Sabbath was never meant to be another burden. It was meant to restore the people. The scriptures show that many things happen on the Sabbath. Leviticus 23 verse 3 calls the day a holy convocation, meaning a gathering of the people. YAHUAH himself followed this custom. Luke 4 verse 16 says, "As his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read." The Sabbath includes worship, teaching, and community.
Blessed are those who hunger for righteousness, for they will be filled. The pure in heart will see the divine.
The Sabbath also included acts of mercy. YAHUAH said in Matthew 12 verse 12, "It is lawful to do good on the Sabbath."
Are ye angry at me, because I have made a man whole on the Sabbath day?
When a woman who had been bound for 18 years was healed, YAHUAH said, "Ought not this woman be loose from this bond on the Sabbath?"
Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace.
The Sabbath restores life. It does not restrict compassion. The day also included fellowship and shared meals. Luke 14 verse 1 tells us that YAHUAH once went to eat in the house of a Pharisee on the Sabbath. Families gathered. Friends shared food. Community was strengthened.
We give thanks for this bread and the hands that prepared it.
The Sabbath was never meant to be empty inactivity. It was meant to redirect life toward Yah and toward one another. Another beautiful reason for the Sabbath appears in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 5 verse 15 says, "Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and YAHUAH, your ELOHIM, brought you out." Slaves never rested. The Sabbath became a weekly declaration of freedom. When the people stopped working, they were declaring something powerful. Our lives are sustained by Yah, not by our striving. YAHUAH summarized the principle simply. Mark 2, verse 27. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a gift, a rhythm given by Yah to restore humanity. Ancient Hebrew teachers often describe the Sabbath with a beautiful phrase. They called it Ma'in Olam Haba, a taste of the world to come. Olam Haba refers to the coming kingdom of Yah. In other words, every Sabbath was meant to give the people a glimpse of the future kingdom. For one day, striving stops, burdens lift, families gather, hearts turn toward Yah. The Sabbath becomes a small preview of the restored world.
Abba Yah, thank you for our family and the gift of the Sabbath.
The prophets describe that coming kingdom. Isaiah 11 verse 9 says, "They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of YAHUAH." The Sabbath rehearses that future reality. It is a weekly rehearsal of the kingdom age to come. The New Testament preserves this same idea. Hebrews 4 verse 9 says, "There remains therefore a Sabbath rest for the people of Elohim." The word used there is sabbatimos. It literally means Sabbath observation or Sabbath rest. The Sabbath becomes both a present practice and a future promise. This is why Isaiah says, "Then you shall delight yourself in Yah." The Sabbath reconnects us with how life was meant to feel, not rushed, not anxious, not driven by endless striving, but peaceful, centered on Yah, and restored. The prophets even say that in the coming kingdom, the Sabbath will continue. Isaiah 66 verse 23 declares, "From one Sabbath to another, all flesh shall come to worship before me, says YAHUAH." The Sabbath is not merely an ancient law. It is part of the eternal rhythm of Yah's kingdom. So the Sabbath becomes a weekly reminder of 5 great truths: creation, redemption, trust, restoration, the coming kingdom. For one day each week, Yah invites his people to step into the peace of the future age to come. The Sabbath was never meant to be a burden. It was meant to be a gift. A weekly invitation from Yah to stop striving, remember who we are, and return to the ancient path. This is the rhythm of the living line of Yashar'el. And we are remembering once again. This is why the prophet said, "Call the Sabbath a delight."